in my experience as a homeschooler, there's been a lot of talk about behavior. So it's not like something new, but I feel like in the last few years, there's a awareness that sometimes people are saying a lot about virtue and not behaving very virtuously.
I love that you mentioned the word virtue, because I was thinking of the word character or character training. And we all, as Christian parents, want to do that or should want to do that, right? So in my mind, habit training and character training or strengthening virtues, they kind of go hand in hand.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, there are quite a few quotes by founding fathers that say that without virtue, we really can't have freedom. And I think it's, something that maybe we haven't highlighted enough and I know in my experience as a homeschooler, there's been a lot of talk about behavior. So it's not like something new, but I feel like in the last few years, there's I think a generally positive sort of awareness that sometimes people are saying a lot about virtue and not behaving very virtuously. Parents might be saying a lot about obeying us, but in the meantime, they are angry and judgmental and ashamed. And so there's a lot sometimes said about virtue and not really acted on. But if we don't have virtue, we can't retain freedom. It's a foundation of our homes.
Okay, so you just said two things that I really want to highlight. Let me see if I can remember them both. The first was this is about freedom. And I'm also transitioning that into the idea of independence. What are we trying to do with our homeschool children? We are trying to raise them into complete independence. And these philosophies, this habit training idea, this virtue building idea, that's all going right along with the idea of training them in independence. Because if they are trained well in various habits and various character responses, then independence and freedom are the things that come from that. The second thing you said led me down the road of thinking about sin and parents. And, because you've mentioned a couple of times that parents are the place where this starts. We cannot expect our children to follow footsteps of habits, of character that aren't modeled for them, that aren't strengthened by watching us actually do those things. But we are sinners. We can't do that perfectly. It's not like we train ourselves into certain habits and then forevermore we are perfect people, right? I mean, that's not how Christianity works. Can you describe how this idea, and I think this is where we're going to get a little practical, how this idea of it starts with parents, but parents aren't perfect. How do we intertwine that and begin first and foremost being models ourselves? And then we'll talk more about what this is going to look like with kids.
Well, this is such a good question, Cindy. I'm glad you picked up on that and went a little deeper, because I think sometimes as parents, we underestimate the virtue of humility or the virtue of repentance. Because yes, like we're all, all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. We're going to make mistakes as parents. And I think that in the past, like there was a movement towards holiness. Like we've been homeschooling a long time. So we were a part of this movement towards, godly homes and raising godly children. But a lot of times the parents were doing it out of, I think, sometimes a misplaced, attainment of salvation almost. And so then instead of being able to humbly admit when they made a mistake, which is a virtue, they just continued to hide or manipulate or control or be almost oppressive in the way they parented, just do as I say and not as I do, or children should be seen and not heard, things like that. But I think that when, as parents, like, yes, some days as moms, we are going to yell at our kids. Some days as moms, we are going to sit around scrolling on our phones instead of reading out loud to our kids and talking about virtue. But if on those days when we blow it, we can humbly go to our kids and say, I made a mistake today. Like, my ideal for our family is that we would be, continually pursuing God, that we'd run hard after righteousness. But today I was tired, I was hormonal, and I didn't make good choices. And I am sorry. Tomorrow will be better, but I appreciate your grace with me. And so there's so many virtues that can be modeled, like the virtue of humility, the virtue of compassion, the virtue of mercy. Those need to also be modeled. But I think in the last, few years, the virtues of mercy, humility have maybe overtaken the virtues of self-control or the virtues of like diligence even, or order. And so it's just keeping things in balance, which is what I love about the rule of St. Benedict, which is the book, Habits for a Sacred Home, is the rule of St. Benedict as evidence in the life of evangelical women, women of faith. And so, seeing how someone like Sabina Wurmbrand lived out this virtue of stewardship, or how someone like Edith Schaefer lived out this virtue of work, helps us to see, okay, here's a very ancient virtue or rule of life or character quality that I can see exhibited in the life of Edith Schaefer, who diligently served her family, served a community. And one of our homeschool heroes, Susan Schaefer Macaulay, her writing is the result of Edith Schaefer's labors in many ways, because it's her daughter. Mm-hmm. So I think that, seeing it exemplified in these women's lives really makes it more clear for us as moms who are like, I'm not in a monastery. I have to take care of my family. I have to, I can't just like be with Jesus all day and be inspired by God. I have to actually like deal with these sinners in my home. And so even though we live in the real world and we don't have the gift of hours and hours of prayer or something, we can still be growing in our faith and growing in our virtue.
Homeschool Insights is sponsored by CTC Math. If you're looking for a great online math program, visit ctcmath.com and try it for free. For more great homeschool inspiration and resources, listen to the Schoolhouse Rocked podcast every Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday.